I think there's a strong argument to be made that governance is governance and not processes and not workflow and not tool selection and not content strategy, because I think those roles should be performed by different people. And I think that the management of the web needs to be spread out throughout the entire organization and not just isolated in this ghetto of specialized people. That's part of your problem. Nobody really gets it except you. Well, nobody really gets it because we tend to land grab the whole thing and just like get very, very kind of jealous of anyone who even wants to touch it. So I think there's a maturation that has to happen and a confidence that needs to happen in our profession so that we can know what we know and know what we do well, but then let other people actively participate in it. So web governance, you can read that. Really so exciting, right? Authoritative administrative structures that set policy. I mean, who really wants to do that? Right? What people really want to do is the product management part, the part where you make the web presence, right? But you can't execute well if you don't have standards against which to execute. So that's very important. So I'm going to talk a little bit before I go through the 3 pieces of governance about some symptoms that you might see. And I'm going to say what you see when there's no web governance, what you see when there's kind of web governance, and what you see when there's formal web governance. And so this is my favorite guy, Carrot with the blinders on. The carrot can be a variety of different things. It can be, I want a raise. That's what my boss says. This is the way I get rewarded, right? Usually that carrot's got nothing to do with a holistic sound web presence. It has something to do with something that's very specific to a program or a line of business or something like that. And so when there is no web governance, people are just focused on how they're going to get their reward immediately. You've got no framework, policies, or standards in the organization. Your web team's angry or super happy. Either like they're so clueless that there's something wrong that they're going la la la, or they're really frustrated because they know how to make the site better, but they can't do it. Right? And this is whoever the central web team is, and whether you have a centralized or decentralized web model, there's usually some core set of people that are sort of responsible for the web infrastructure. Right? So that's a whole discussion about web execution and the structure of your web team. But those people are usually kind of frustrated because they know how it should be. The site's thought of as a cost center, and maybe you're not even sure that you have just one web presence or a website. People think they have their own. There's some confusion in that. And the website just basically isn't good. It's kind of not easy to navigate. It looks like what it looks like. Looks like it has those problems. This is where I think most people are. You've got the delegation of this guiding principles piece, which I think is a fairly strategic piece, delegated way down deep into the organization. So you might have strategic guiding principles project by project, as opposed to strategic guiding principles for the overall web presence. So this is going down at a junior level. You have understood policies and standards, but they're not enforceable. Right? So I think there's the litmus test for this is, this is what you'll see on the bottom, is try to execute a whole-scale change on the site. Anything. The example I used to give, kind of pre-CMS-y type things, were like, it's gone from 2009 to 2010. How easy is it to get that new copyright on everything? Right? That's kind of easier to do now because there are ways to do that, although I know people who still can't do that consistently. Right? But try to do something like redesign the whole new site, give it a whole new look and feel. If you know how to do that and the pathway to do that, and you have the power and the ability to do that, it's not necessarily that your governance is great, but you can actually affect change across the site. If you can't, because some people don't want to, or all of these varieties of other things, you're probably lacking in the governance. You might have some governance going on, but it's really based on organizational structure or loose mandates. That means you're friends with some people and they do what you say, but the people who don't like you don't have to do what you say, and you've got like a few rogue web groups going on. And then this is kind of like La La Land and where we would like to be, and in the 2 minutes before you die, this is what you're going to imagine, right? That you have some kind of formal web governance framework, and that you are the sort of central web people and you're the lead bird, and you're flying and everybody's falling in formation behind you just the way they ought to. Doesn't happen that often. You have fully documented policies and standards, everybody's content and happy, and the quality of the website is high, you're able to be strategic. When new technologies come out, you can analyze whether or not they're appropriate for your organization. And if you decide that they are, you can create standards for them, and then you publish the standards, and everyone follows them, and you don't have to actually do all the work yourself. And you can bring in outside vendors, and they follow the standards, and then you have coffee all day. It's wonderful, right? That's kind of where you want to be.